Before the Titanic, the Fram was the most famous ship in the world. It was the quintessential polar exploration vessel and was one of only a few ships that was built for the purpose. Most of the other Antarctic ships of the heroic age had originally had some other purpose, usually as a whaler or sealer. A young Norwegian zoologist and explorer, Fridtjof Nansen, had read an article in a Christiania, now Oslo, newspaper about some items washing up at the southwestern tip of Greenland. They were from the Jeanette, a ship that had been wrecked in 1879, crushed by sea ice while attempting to find the Northwest Passage. The Jeanette itself had drifted 600 miles, trapped in the ice for 17 months before sinking near Siberia. The path of the ship and also of the flotsam indicated to Nansen that there was a formerly unknown transpolar current at work. Other evidence, such as Siberian driftwood in treeless Iceland and Greenland, and the distribution of ice of various thicknesses and ages, supported Nansen's theory. After much thought and discussion, in particular with Otto Sverdrup, Nansen began to have faith in the idea and conceived a simple and unorthodox plan. He would commit a ship purposely into the Siberian ice and let the transpolar current that he had so much evidence for carry her across the North Pole. As well as great patience and fortitude from the crew, the plan required a unique ship, the like of which had not yet been built. Nansen's plan was greeted enthusiastically by the Christiania Geographical Society in 1890, and a 200,000 crown subsidy from Parliament soon led to a total of nearly 500,000 crowns being raised, including a 20,000 personal contribution from King Oscar of Norway. Nansen gave the contract to build his unique ship to Colin Archer, a gifted Norwegian naval architect of Scottish ancestry. The main difference between Nansen's ship and those that had gone before was that rather than try to resist the ice pressing in from the sides powered by wind and currents, the Fram, forward in Norwegian, would instead rise above the ice by virtue of a rounded hull. It would evade the grasp of the ice, the way a cherry pip squeezed between thumb and forefinger pops into the air. But Archer took no chances. As well as being, as Nansen specified, round and slippery as an eel, the Fram would also be prodigiously strong. The Fram was launched on the 26th of October 1892, named by Eva Nansen, Fridtjof Nansen's wife. She cried out, "Fram skal du heed," she shall be called Fram. A huge red pennant bearing the name in white letters was run up the central flagstaff. The masts had not yet been fitted. This was the first public announcement of the name. A three-masted schooner Fram with a total length of 39 meters, width of 11 meters, and draft of 4.75 meters was not a handsome ship when completed. The ends were blunt and looked almost identical. The rounded bottom to help escape from the ice did not make for graceful lines. All but 3 inches of the keel was hidden, which would make her performance in heavy seas poor. But she was enormously strong, as Nansen put it. The ship was both unusually wide and unusually shallow in order to better withstand the forces of pressing ice. A disadvantage of this design was that she rolled more than most ships in heavy seas. Fram was built with an outer layer of greenheart wood to withstand the ice, and with almost no keel to handle the shallow waters Nansen expected to encounter. Rudder and propeller could be lifted into 2 wells inside the hull for protection from the ice. The propeller was 2-bladed and designed to stop vertically so that it was protected by the rudder post. Losing a propeller blade was a common mishap when working in ice. Initially, Fram was fitted with a steam engine. Prior to Amundsen's expedition to the South Pole in 1910, the engine was replaced with a diesel engine, a first for polar exploration vessels. The new engine allowed for a longer voyage without refueling. Like so many other polar expeditions, led by an explorer of proven ability, Nansen was faced with a choice of hundreds of applicants from all over the world for the 10 places available. There were to be 12 on board altogether, including Nansen and Otto Sverdrup. One of his favorite applications, rejected, was from a French lady, tired of life, who offered her services, unstipulated, before she entered a convent. The Fram sailed for the Arctic on June 24, 1893, a plain ship in shape, but brightly painted with gray hull, green gunwales, and red petroleum tanks on Nansen's orders to provide some respite from the gloom of the Arctic night. She carried provisions for 6 years. All available cargo spaces were filled. Even the gaps between barrels were filled with firewood. A careful manifest of the whole cargo was taken so that any item could be found when required. Once away from initial farewells, they headed out into the North Sea, straight into a storm. The Fram behaved as predicted in such conditions, awfully. The smooth, shallow hull with no projections meant that, like ice ships ever since, open water travel in rough conditions could become an ordeal. On July the 12th, the Fram reached Tromsø and took on winter clothing and supplies. Finally, the ship left Norway on the 20th of July from Vardø. By now, the crew had been through an endless round of honorary dinners, speeches, and what Nansen had come to feel was far too premature lionization before they had even set off properly. One final stop was made in Khabarovsk, Siberia, to bring on board 34 sledge dogs. They had also intended to replenish coal supplies, but as time was running out, they chose instead to press on and avoid becoming iced in entirely the wrong region of the Arctic Ocean. The Fram entered the pack on September the 25th, 1893, heading along an ice-free current flowing from the Lena River. In a few days, she had been trapped by the pack ice, the first ship ever to seek to do such a thing rather than avoid it. The rudder was withdrawn and the engine entirely dismantled and stored away, the engineer Amundsen establishing his machine shop in its place. A carpenter's shop was set up in the hold and a blacksmith's forge set up on deck. A giant windmill was set up to provide electricity now that the engine was dismantled. It had canvas sails 12 feet in diameter and lit the saloon up admirably, though it could be temperamental, especially in strong winds. The Fram was now an Arctic station rather than a ship at all. Every man on board found his time fully occupied. Meteorological and magnetic gauges and instruments were set up on the ice. Measurements and figures on the sea temperature, depth, salinity, etc. were taken and carefully recorded. Nansen's own task, among others, was to analyze the various forms of the aurora borealis. The dogs were moved out of the ship and onto the ice, where they had much more space, though were brought back again after they fought viciously. One was killed. Another 2 were carried off and eaten by a polar bear. October brought darkness with the sun appearing only as a red line on the southern horizon. It also brought the first test of the hull of the Fram. On Friday the 13th, she survived a series of pressure waves, the like of which had destroyed many ships before her. Instead, they passed harmlessly. The crew passed the time in the comfort of the saloon, secure in the knowledge that they would not be harmed. The same was not true out on the ice. However, as kennels became buried and an ice anchor was so buried that the cable had to be cut. Now that physical security was achieved, food was plentiful to the point where the men were putting on weight and scurvy was banished. The biggest threat came from boredom. The current that Nansen predicted certainly did exist, but it was not a continuous current. Wind and tide conspired to take the ship northwards, then back south again for a while. Only a month into the entrapment in the ice, Nansen wrote in his diary how the days dragged past. But the time did pass, and the crew were kept in generally good spirits through the long Arctic night. They passed the 80th parallel on February the 2nd, 1894. By the 20th, the sun returned. As winter gave way to spring, the surface of the ice began to melt and turn wet. On the 28th of May, Nansen wrote, "Ugh! I am tired of these endless white plains." Travel from the ship became more difficult and dangerous over the rotting ice, and kayaks were built and launched. By the 1-year point, the Fram was still frozen into the ice. She had traveled 189 miles in a straight line, though her course was far from straight, and gained nearly 3 degrees of latitude. About a day and a half sailing for the Fram, given open water. Nansen was hoping that they would be forced nearer to the pole. By mid-December, she had reached 82 degrees, 30 minutes north, breaking the record for a ship as set in 1876 by the Alert. In November, however, Nansen announced his plan to the crew. He was to leave the ship and head out for the pole using sledge and kayak. Otto Sverdrup was the obvious companion, but he understood that he should remain with the Fram. Johansen was chosen as Nansen's companion. The plan was fraught with danger. Once the men had left the ship, it would continue to drift on in the ice, and they could not find it again. After 2 unsuccessful attempts, they would leave the following spring on March 14, 1895. The preparations were meticulous. Cans of pemmican and pate were opened and thawed, their contents reshaped to fit the kayaks, and then rewrapped in canvas. They took copies of all the scientific data gathered by the Fram and acknowledgement that either the ship or Nansen and Johansen might fail to return. There was a concern that the Fram might remain locked in the ice, never to be released. After all, any other ship that had experienced this had simply been crushed and sunk, so no one really knew. In the event, Nansen and Johansen would spend 3 weeks trying to get to the pole, and then another 14 months trying to get back to safety. The Fram would drift 2/3 of the distance that they covered towards the pole so arduously on foot. The Fram continued to drift and would do so for another 1.5 years before Sverdrup blasted the ship clear of the ice that would hold her for nearly 3 years. She emerged from the pack ice as Nansen had predicted, near Spitsbergen. Nansen and Johansen were compelled to abandon the attempt on April 7, 1895, by which time they had reached 86 degrees 13.6 minutes north. They then set course for Franz Josef Land, where they built a crude hut in which they were forced to spend the winter. In May 1896, they left their shelter and in 2 lashed-together kayaks made their way along the coast, reaching Cape Flora on June 17th. There, by a remarkable coincidence, they met the British explorer F.G. Jackson, who took them back to Norway on board his ship the Windward. By August 13, 1896, they were back in Vardø. Nansen, Johansen, and the Fram were reunited and returned to Norway to a hero's welcome. Nansen was feted wherever he went and honored with gold medals from numerous geographical societies. His Arctic adventure, the second epic journey he had taken part in, the first was a crossing of Greenland, took its toll physically and mentally on Nansen, and he was never to undertake such a journey again. Sverdrup, however, had not lost his taste for adventure, and Johansen would go to Antarctica as one of Amundsen's party in his southern polar expedition from 1910 to 1912. The ship was left to decay in storage from 1912 until the late 1920s, when Lars Christensen, Otto Sverdrup, and Oscar Wisting initiated efforts to preserve it via the Fram Committee. In 1935, the ship was installed in the Fram Museum, where it now stands.